It's 5 p.m. and I'd like to call the April 3rd Staunton City Council Budget Work Session to order. Do I have a motion to approve the work session minutes? Yes. Is there a motion?
I don't think you need a motion.
I don't need a motion for today. Thank you. That's okay. Good evening, everyone. On March 17th, 2025, I received a request from Councilor Overholtzer to participate remotely in the April 3rd, 2025 Staunton City Council Budget Work Session due to a personal matter that prevents his physical attendance at the meeting. Pursuant to the Freedom of Information Act, I will now ask Councilor Overholtzer to state the personal matter that makes him unable to attend tonight's meeting. Councilor Overholtzer, can you hear me?
Yes, I can. Good evening. I am on vacation.
Thank you. I will now entertain a motion to allow Councilor Overholtzer's remote participation in this meeting pursuant to Staunton City Council Procedural Memorandum Number 3.
So do I read what's on here? I don't have one.
I have.
Sorry, Councilor Park.
All right, pursuant to Staunton City
Oh,
Council
okay.
Procedural Memorandum Number 3, I move to allow Councilor Overholtzer to remotely participate in the April 3rd, 2025 Staunton City Council Budget Work Session due to a personal matter.
Thank you, Councilor Park. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Is there any further discussion? Mr. Kissinger, could you please call the roll?
Mr. Campbell.
Aye.
Ms. Woods.
Aye.
Mr. Shepherd.
Aye.
Ms. Park.
Aye.
Vice Mayor Arrowood.
Aye.
Mayor Edwards.
Aye.
Motion carries.
Thank you, Mr. Kissinger. Councilor Overholtzer, could you please state the remote location from where you are participating?
Yes, I am in Nags Head, North Carolina.
Lovely. And can all councilors here and the audience hear Councilor Overholtzer?
Yes.
Terrific. Thank you. All righty. So this evening, we are here for a budget work session with Ms. Jessie Moyers and City Manager Leslie Beauregard.
Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
Let's kick us off.
Ms.
All right, we'll
Beauregard.
kick it off.
This is so odd having you. Ms. Beauregard.
I'm just here.
You're just here.
So we have a presentation to walk you through this evening. You don't have to save questions at the end. If you have a question that you're dying to ask, just please, let us know and we'll try our best to answer our questions. So hopefully by the end of this evening, we'll have some general direction of what we should be presenting at the April 10th work session. Now, the public hearing is on the proposed budget. So I don't expect, we'll just come in hopefully on the 10th, a week from today, with some changes or alterations you all would like to make to the budget and continue discussing at that time. So with that, I'm going to let Ms. Moyers.
Okay. The first few slides are going to be repetitive from the last council meeting. This as a reminder.
Sorry. I'm pointing it to.
Yeah. This happened last time.
On?
Yeah.
All right, you want to do it?
Josh.
Okay, thank you. Next slide. Okay, here we go.
This is a slide that you saw last week. The total proposed budget, including all funds, is $164 million, $37,707. That's an increase of 10.4%. As you remember, there was a slide last week that walked you through how we got to the 10.4% increase, with about 5% of that being capital projects that are planned in FY26 for the water, sewer, and stormwater fund. The general fund, which is of most interest, is $79.6 million, and that is an 8.31% increase over FY25. The largest part of that is the increase in the real estate and property taxes. A good portion of that, a little over $1 million, is VDOT funding. That is an increase in their lane mileage reimbursement rate. And about $433,000 of that is restricted for DSS and CSA state contributions.
Next slide.
The real estate taxes at the 91 cents would increase 4.4 million. Personal property, there's no rate increase there. That is $278,000, just an estimated increase from the Commissioner of Revenue. No material changes for sales or lodging tax. Meals tax still performs pretty strongly. So there's a $90,000 increase for next year, and business and license tax revenue, $100,000 increase. Next are the two restricted amounts that I told you were in the revenue, 1.1 for VDOT, and then the state revenue associated with the Children's Services Act. As you know, this is the first year in 10 years that we're going to lose the jail buy-in. And so that is a negative change in revenue of $665,000.
Is that 665,000? Is that split between the localities?
That is
or it's
Staunton's
just
share.
Stanton's share?
That is just our share. This is a slide that you would have saw when the budget was introduced. It's introduced at the 91 cents, and 2 cents of that allows for the unknown expenditures that we're going to have associated with the tunnels that run under the wharf. So the next few slides should be familiar. This is how the increases in the tax revenue are being spent, with the largest portion going to the Staunton City Schools of a little over $1.6 million. That's a 9.55% increase for them. Juvenile and Domestic Relations District Court, we had to add additional operating expenditures, 1.5 FTE for the Sheriff's Office, 1.5 FTE custodians for the building. And then the rest is mostly utilities and a few operating supplies. And then you see the 657,000, that is for capital improvement funding for infrastructure repairs and improvements.
Yes, yeah, I'm sorry, I could not remember. Is the 1.5 increase maintenance at the new court, is that in addition to, or is that the only?
The
Or the
the
maintenance
1.5 FTEs for the custodians,
for the custodian?
that is
Total.
total.
Wow, okay.
They did not get any positions in FY25 budget
Mhm.
because they don't require the training that the
Mhm.
Sheriff's Office does. So. The next largest category is a $1.1 million for salaries and benefits, with the largest portion of that being the 3% cost of living rate increase for full-time and part-time city employees. The state included a 1.5% bonus for Constitution officers and their staff. A portion of that will be funded by the state. We will be responsible for the portion that is locally funded. A 10% increase in health insurance. And again, that is for the city and for the employees both, increasing 10%. We will not know the exact increase until probably August, September, when we get more claims data. And then in this budget is unfreezing a traffic position that was requested by Public Works that was frozen, I believe, in FY23's budget to fund a $3 an hour raise. And then we move.
I'm sorry.
Yeah.
The question came up last time about what our neighboring localities are doing as far as the cost of living. Augusta County presented their budget on Monday. They are giving a 4%. And that's COLA and merit. And I think it's on January 1st. Waynesboro has not presented their budget yet. They'll present their budget on Monday.
And I believe the state is at 3%.
Yeah, it stays at 3%.
Thank you.
So other expenditures, 305,000, 76,000 of that is for real estate tax relief for elderly, disabled, and veterans. 16.5 is for a new canine unit or replacement unit for police department. 39,760 for the StauntonBusiness.com website. And I will have a separate slide on that a little bit later. And then 173,570 for all other city departments. I did want to point out, this note wasn't on the slide from the last meeting, but about 65,000 of that has offsetting revenue lines. So DMV fees, recreation trips, economic development agreements, and state aid library books, those all have offsetting revenue lines for those expenditures. So our increases
So-
for,
I'm sorry. So it balances out is what you're saying.
yes, those particular, the 65,000. So that leaves our departments only increasing by about a little over $100,000. And I'll talk a little bit later about how we funded the rest of their request. So this is the Staunton
Ms.
business.com.
Moyers, I'm sorry. Could you go back one more time? I'm looking at salaries and benefits. I recall, I think it was last year as well, the increase due to high claims. Are there always high claims? Are there ever
Staunton has
low
experienced
claims?
high claims the
Mhm.
last 4 years, I believe.
Yeah.
Yes, it has continued to be high. That's why we need another double-digit increase in health insurance. We have used a lot of our fund balance to where we're only carrying about a little over 2 months of operating expenditures in our fund balance, which is a little bit below what the recommendation is. So we don't have the option to use our fund balance anymore, and we must do the 10% increase.
Moyers.
So the StauntonBusiness.com website update was requested by Amanda DeMayo in Economic Development. She could not be here tonight, so we would like to bring additional detail from her next work session. But so far, this is what she has given us as justification. It was in the 2019 business plan. It was a critical part of the plan that Timmons Group developed, and it was approved in 2021. It would align with the recently launched StauntonCrossing.com website, and it will serve as a user-friendly tool to market Staunton to businesses. The staff is looking into whether the 35,000 is that the optimal price, or is there a better way that we can update this website that would not cost that much, but we need an additional week to work through those details. And so we plan to bring more back to you next Thursday.
Does the annual maintenance fee include any assistance in maintaining the content, or is our staff responsible for managing the content?
That is one of the things that we need to research for next week, because we already pay an annual maintenance fee. And so we need more detail about if this is going to be in addition, or if this is just going to replace the current annual maintenance. But that is one thing that we'll follow up on next week.
Thank you.
Yeah, this is one that's a little confusing to me, just because I know various businesses that have very active websites set up that they're shocked when it costs $100 a month. So obviously it must be of a different scale in municipal sense, but would look.
Yeah, I would also reiterate, just, this is one of the, going through the budget over the past week, I know that we want more than like going in a homemade Wix.com kind of thing like I have for my store.
WordPress,
But
yeah.
I know we want to level up for that. But this is just one of the things I think regular citizens, how do you justify that? Honestly, I would rather have a Wix.com and get some cool college students to maintain it for the city than spend this much money when we have so many other things that need to be taken care of. But I guess it's weak.
So outside agency and SOL partnerships increased by almost $1 million. The largest part of that is the locality share of the Department of Social Services and the Children's Services Act. There is an increase in the animal shelter due to our increase in usage and increase in expenditures moving to the Verona location while still operating the old location until we can sell that building.
Can I ask a question here? When I was going through the budget and it said it was due, part of the animal shelter cost increase was due to a large number of, I guess, people getting caught with multiple animals and stuff. I was wondering, the people who have done this, are they charged? Do they have to pay any kind of restitution and stuff for the costs that we're now having to pay because of this?
I know if it's like a court case, then yes, they
Okay.
do. And I can get more information
It
on
doesn't mean that they will pay it.
Pay it.
Yeah,
But they
right.
also,
Yes.
but
I didn't
it does not factor into the increase in the usage of the animal shelter and this cost that we're seeing here. But there is some court cost that is recouped.
Okay.
The next increase is almost 137,000 for the Valley Community Services Board. This would fully fund our required 10% match of the state grants. Do you remember last year, there was a 62% increase in the request of funding for the city of Staunton for the Community Services Board, and we limited that increase to 10%. This year, we're back to fully funding it, and we thought that, so the state has some language in their budget that if localities do not meet the required 10%, then they're going to claw back funding from the Community Services Board because they do not want to supplant local funding. And that is why we're recommending the full funding here. Middle River Regional Jail, I believe our usage dropped slightly there. So the increase is about 1.3% or about 44,000. Office on Youth, $29,051. Part of that is requesting that they take 2 part-time positions and make them into 2 full-time positions because they're having a lot of trouble hiring and retaining the part-time help and to help with the increase in demand. Health Department, $8,988, represents a 2.8% increase. SDDA is $8,871. That is downtown tax revenue. We are just a pass-through for that. Valley Children's Advocacy Center, that's $35,000 increase. That would fully fund their $50,000 request. Last budget cycle, they had the same request, but we capped their funding at $15,000. This is adding the $35,000 to get them to the full 50. Talking Book Center, last year was the first year that we started funding the Talking Book Center. We also let them use space in our library. They requested a $1,700 increase, which is currently in the budget. The next 3 are decreases, but they were decreases that were requested, so they are fully funded. That's the Shenandoah Valley Partnership, the Planning District Commission, and then the Detention Center. The Detention Center is using some of their fund balance, and I believe our usage went down there, so that combines about a $110,000 decrease in our contribution to the Detention Center. And the Staunton Community Capital Funding, we are decreasing that $5,000. That is not fully funding them. That was a recommendation from staff. And on the right, you'll see the VDOT reimbursable funds that is supported with VDOT revenues.
Can you elaborate on the reason that the Community Capital Fund is recommended to be reduced to such a small amount? I assume there's some kind of grants to small businesses, or can you elaborate?
Do you want to speak to that one? That was Amanda Demayo's.
Yeah, I'm looking for that. So if you give me a minute, I was looking for that right now. Where's the schedule? Yeah, when we spoke to Mr. Mayo about this, one of the requests that we would like to make that the funding be directly allocated to grants and loans to support Staunton small businesses. So we want to make sure that that actually is occurring. And so when so that was one of the thoughts behind going and reducing the request to kind of see how that plays out in the next year. I know that Mr. Mayo and Ms. Blythe have been meeting with the new executive director and the staff over there to talk through some of those issues. So I believe that's part of the reason to go ahead and reduce the request for this year, see how that plays out for next year, and then kind of analyze it again. And we go into the FY27 budget.
So how much, excuse me. How much did they request? How much is their request? 20,000?
I believe it was 25, but let me find that.
Oh, there it is.
Was that original request when they first started, or have they increased over the years?
So their request, they've been getting $20,000. Their request was 25. We reduced them by 5,000. So the proposed budget has 15,000. So from 20,000 to 15,000, FY25 to 26.
You said just to look over the year to see if they're progressing.
I think they've had some turnover in staff
Yeah.
over there. And so Mr. Mayo would like to work work with them this next year to ensure that Stanton businesses are actually receiving the benefits, that our money is going back to Stanton businesses. And I think that's kind of been a question mark. So she recommended a reduction to see how that plays out in the next year. So my thought was when we fund them at whatever level they get funded at, they'll receive, there'll be some kind of stipulations put in place for that funding, for them to receive that funding. And I would like Ms. DeMayo and Ms. Blythe will be working with them throughout the year to ensure that that happens.
It's my understanding, and I could be completely wrong, but that it was Stanton specific and then it went Valley General. And so now it includes Harrisonburg and other localities up and down the valley.
Lexington, I mean, it's.
Yeah, so it's not just, it used to be Stanton, I think it was Stanton Creative Community Fund.
Yeah.
Right.
Right,
yes.
and now it's Valley specific. So probably she wants to, yeah, make sure. So good.
So that's.
That makes sense. Thank you.
So a question came up this week of how this budget and CIP aligns with the current Stanton plan. So the next two slides will relate to that. The first strategic area is infrastructure. So it continues with the reserve to fund the Uniontown Neighborhood Action Plan. There's a new CIP reserve for city infrastructure repairs and improvements. We are increasing the sidewalk reserve, which is typically funded at $100,000 a year to $300,000 a year. And it funds the Edgewood sidewalk shortfall from CIP funds. I will note that that funding and increase in the sidewalks is with carryover money, so that will only happen if the funds are available. Economic development is the website update and adding the new CIP reserve for the Affordable Workhouse and Workforce Housing Initiative. Responsive efficient government, the additional almost 373,000 for this fiscal year's JNDR courthouse operating expenditures. While we were going through department requested budgets, I identified $430,000 where departments were not spending their whole entire budgets. And so we moved those amounts to fund requests that were required due to increase in chemicals, materials, fuel, electricity, things like that. Wanted to point out that we did a phone update and renegotiated our cell phone contract over the last few years. And over the last 3 budget cycles, that has saved us $40,000 in the telephone lines across the city.
Well done.
Thank you.
Yeah.
That
Every
is
little bit
all
helps, yeah.
Kurt Plowman.
Oh,
I cannot
Kurt.
take any credit for that. And this also, it fully funds the Valley Community Services Board, Department of Social Services, Children's Services Act, the Valley Children's Advocacy Center, and the Central Shenandoah Health Department. Those were a big impact this year on this year's budget. And it also supports the expenditures and the new animal shelter, which will be new and improved. And I guess hopefully we move in May or June.
Mayor Joe, okay.
I believe so.
Felt like it was always.
I'll probably have 3 more cats.
So the next strategic area is the West End. This budget continues to fund the reserve for the West End revitalization. And it added a CIP project for the bus shelters in the West End and our courthouse that has that we are putting a lot of money into is in the West End. Built environment, there are several things here. There are new CIP reserves, and again, that these are funded with carryover, so they will only be funded if carryover is available at the end of the year.
You talking about carryover. We haven't heard anything. Do you have an idea of how much carryover there'll be this year?
So real estate taxes will be the biggest part of the carryover because 2025's budget is built on old assessments. And so the new assessments will affect FY 25's carryover because those rates go into effect January 1, 2025. So it will be a significant carryover again. And there's another slide I'll tell you that will contribute to carryover unless you put it on a budget amendment. So I don't have an exact number, but it will be big enough to fund the CIP and probably have extra left over. Where it's going to be a lot tighter is FY 26's carryover that funds 27. We're gonna probably make some decisions about CIP lines that will not be fully funded that year.
So you're saying you don't know, you don't have the numbers right now, and
I don't have an exact number for you,
Exact
no.
number.
Fiscal year's not over yet, so
Like, I'm trying
we'll
to
come
get
back,
a
we'll come
guess.
and just, no, I'm not letting her guess. 'Cause then you'll hold us to that number. Yeah, I think I think like we've done before, we've typically come maybe in October to give a very, very preliminary, and then you'll see the final numbers in November, December, and then do an appropriation around January, February
Of next year.
of next year, correct?
So the new CIP reserves are for fire station number 1 improvements and relocation of the police department. It continues the reserve for the library improvements. Continues the Parks and Rec Public Use Facilities Reserve to improve the parks facilities. It does not continue it at the $600,000 that it's currently it's being funded at, because that's just not sustainable to carry that level of reserve for parks when we have a new reserve for fire station, police station. The new JNDR courthouse will finish construction sometime in the fall this year. There's a planned Gypsy Hill Park Pool House replacement to begin construction at the closure of the 2025 season. And there's planned renovation of the parks bathrooms for both parks in the Montgomery Hall Park Pool House and the pump house.
When would we bid that last, that renovation?
For the renovation of the bathrooms,
Yeah.
So
And
that-
we increased the scope because it was,
we're hoping to bid it all together, because when we did Gypsy Hill by itself, the bid came in really high, and we think by bidding them all together and having a larger project, that will yield better results. That project is being delayed a little bit because we are down staffing in the engineering department, and they're the ones that are overseeing the work that's being done there.
have an idea on when we're bidding.
No, I do not.
That's fine.
We can get more details for you.
That'd be great. Thank you.
Ms. Moyers, I'm sorry. I am just scribbling notes down here, and I was listening to you. I heard you say this will only be covered if there's carryover,
Mhm.
and I can't remember which one you,
So it's the majority of our CIP
The
will
majority of
only
the
be
CIP
funded
will
if there's
only-
carryover.
but you think there will be substantial.
Currently in this proposed budget, it's the West End Reserve, Uniontown Reserve, Library Reserve, and 2 cents for infrastructure. Those are the only items that are being funded out of the general fund transfer. Everything else will depend on carryover or grant revenue.
And you'll see a list later in this presentation. that
Perfect.
List every single project and the source of funding for
Thank
those
you.
projects.
Excellent. Thank you very much.
So the next slide was put in as a request from a council member. They had asked if the sale of the crossing parcels for the Columbia Gas and the other small one are in our CIP. And the answer is no, they're not in our CIP. The funds first go into the EDA fund. And then because there's a due to the general fund of almost $13 million, it gets transferred over to our general fund. And it comes in as recovered costs, which is a revenue line. So council could direct us to appropriate those funds on the next budget amendment for any particular purpose. And if you do not appropriate them on the next budget amendment, they will fall to the bottom line as FY25 carryover. That would then come back to you to be appropriated in January or February of next year. And that is because we did not budget revenue because we did not know we were going to sell them. And so it's revenue that comes in that wasn't budgeted, and therefore it's carryover. Are there any questions about that?
It doesn't go toward the debt service.
No, the
process, yeah.
debt service was refunded in 2021, and I believe it has a 10-year call period, so it cannot be refunded. You could put it in the debt service fund balance, and it will sit there, but I cannot use it to pay off the debt early. That debt will be paid off, I believe, in 4 to 5 years.
So I want to comprehend this more efficiently. So we have $12.7 million that we could appropriate.
No,
No,
No.
that is money that, that is a due to on the EDA's balance sheet to the city, where the city paid $15 million in the land deal to get the crossing land many years ago.
So which
We
one-
have
one
one
point-
million,
okay,
one
got you.
seventy-four,
Alright.
250
It'll
that you
come off
could
the
appropriate.
That's what I was thinking. Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
you could use that for capital projects.
Right, we can
That's,
use.
it's
the
one-time
1 point.
money,
It is.
so you could use it for that.
Yes, I would not recommend using it for any operating expenditures or ongoing expenditures because it is one-time money that will not, well, hopefully there'll be other parcels we sell, but that will not repeat.
So would it be possible to put that into our unknown of the infrastructure?
Absolutely. All right. And we have one last remaining budget amendment, probably that I will bring to you the end of May, beginning of June. So we would have to put it on there if we wanted to appropriate it in 25. So the next slide, there's potential loss of federal funding, and the biggest impacts would be to our library and the health department. So we just wanted to put that in front of you just to remind you that about $237,000 of our library funding comes from the state, which trickles down from the federal government. And so if there are cuts there, those services, we would have to decrease our spending or make up for those funds. So we just wanted to like put this slide in front of you to make you aware that this could be something that comes at us in the future.
Yeah, we're just kind of tracking things as we hear about them and they come to our attention. These two came to our attention just this past week. So we thought it was important to get it in front of you. I mean, I think the health department thing, reductions could be pretty devastating. I mean, I was surprised to hear that 10% of their staff, our local health department staff, it was funded with those COVID funds that are going away. So that's pretty significant. Again, we don't have a dollar amount, but Ms. Morocco, who's the director, will be coming to council in May soon. I can't remember exactly the date to talk to you all, kind of reintroduce herself. I believe they're working on a strategic plan, so I'm sure she would be happy to answer questions about this as well as they receive more information from the CDC.
Do you know what that dollar amount is offhand, the 10% of local department staff that's funded with COVID funds?
No, we do not, and we'll get more information from Dr. Baraka, who will be in front of you all in a few meetings from now. And I'm sure she would be happy to, as she kind of sifts through that, to answer those questions. But we don't have that information yet.
So the next slide is a slide that you would have seen during the introduction of the proposed budget. We already talked about the 430,000 and that the CIP of 3.6 million would be funded with carryover. There are about $4 million of requests from departments that have that did not make it into the proposed budget. The next few slides, I will be walking through those just so that you are aware of what departments have requested and their needs that we were not able to fund at this point in time. There's 146,250 in outside agency requests that remain unfunded, with the largest portion of that being 6 new requests that we did not fund any new requests at this point in time in the proposed budget. We still have a budgeted vacancy for open positions of 300,000, and we fund about almost $1 million of debt payments from our fund balance. So going through the unfunded requests, I'm going to start with judicial, about $568,000. The sheriff is requesting 2 additional full-time staff members. He requested 3 full-time staff members. In the proposed budget is 1 full-time and 1 part-time. So the 2 full-time not been funded in the proposed budget. The clerk of court requested a part-time position be converted to a full-time position, $30,000. That is currently unfunded. The sheriff has requested 6 vehicles for the new staff for the courthouse, $383,000. That currently remains unfunded. And then there are operating expenditures that are unfunded for the sheriff, Commonwealth attorney, and clerk of court. The unfunded requests for public safety are $1.1 million. They requested the hazardous duty multipliers that would affect our police and fire staff. It gives them a higher retirement payout. There are a lot of localities that have moved to doing the hazardous duty multiplier. And we received a list the other day that was quite extensive. But once you opt in, we will always have to pay the higher rate, which in terms of FY26 is about $208,000. The police department proposed a career development plan They have 6 open positions, I believe. This would help them to retain some of their more experienced staff. It would not increase the entry level pay, but it's 384,000, and we did not have the funding to approve that in the FY26 budget. The fire department requested 6 new positions for 453,000 to allow them to appropriately staff to help cover vacations, sicknesses, leaves, things like that. They struggled to get those things covered and to get their staff time off with what they're running right now. Their operating increase for police department, 20,700. Police have also requested priority dispatch. We added that last budget cycle for medical, and they would like to add the fire and the police department, I believe it's police dispatch modules for the second and third modules, but we were not able to fund that in this budget. And then there are some operating increases that were denied for 911, fire, and then the inspections office. Moving on to Parks, Recreation, Library, and Culture, which is $340,000 of unfunded request. The majority of that being parks equipment. There were no new equipment funded in this budget. We did add a Parks and Rec equipment reserve starting in FY26 that would be funded with carryover of $100,000 that they can use towards this equipment. That would be available January, February. Yes, Michelle.
Ms. Moyers, I'm
Yes.
so sorry
I'm
that
sorry.
I'm asking to go back to, but I was just trying to digest all of the public safety unfunded requests. Looking at the fire department requests and the statement that firefighters are struggling to get vacation time, it's a very stressful job.
Mhm.
And
Yes.
very important for them to have the time off. And I'm wondering if their department has ratios that are correct. I mean, are they fully staffed? They're needing it? Chief Ball,
Chief Ball, if you can come.
yeah,
up.
Chief, I don't want a statement like that to go by without,
No,
hearing.
you're good.
Yeah.
So we are, each shift has 11.
Mhm.
And in mid 2024, when I was appointed the interim, we were really, really struggling getting folks off, which just totally affected morale. So we had to, one of my first things in sitting down and speaking with the captains and Perry, we did a staffing change. It put us to 10 per shift minimum. To supplement that, we put the station in front of Walmart, the county station, on initial assignments to help fill that void. We're supplemented by 20. We currently have 20 part-time staff. Human Resources has allowed us to continue to add a couple, which is really helping getting our folks time off. They sit down. In fact, yesterday, C-Shift sat down for the next 6 months. So from July to December, they pick their time off.
Okay.
But if 2 people are just by
Yeah.
chance have the same vacation, that one person is guaranteed, the other's not. So they're paying ahead for their vacation, but they don't know if they'll be off yet. So by upping our staffing, we can put those levels to guarantee 2 folks off instead of just 1 right now. Does that help?
That helps. It's still a bit stressful. Do the part-time firefighters help?
Yes, they do. And
Tremendously. Okay.
finance and human
Yeah.
resources, we've worked with them and got them a pay increase.
Okay, so that's a
That's really helped also.
solution to that
Yes,
problem.
because most of ours come from neighboring departments.
Okay.
So they get off this morning and then they come to work for us another 24 hours. So they're working 48. So we had to make it worth their while to work 48 hours in a row.
Good question. So the 6 positions, those are full-time for the fire department.
That's
And
correct.
is it a thing that it's like all or nothing? I mean, if we could figure out how to do 2 or 4.
It
like
would take,
how-
so our 3 shifts, it would have to be a minimum of 3
Okay.
people. because we can't have
Yeah,
12
because you
on
have
one
3
shift,
shifts,
11 on
yeah.
the other. So three would be the minimum.
And we had discussed that. It's just we could not
Yeah.
find the 225,000.
Yeah, sure. Right. We just want to see what's.
One quick question about the part-time. Do you find with the part-time, is it somewhat a positive aspect for some of the part-time people to have that flexibility? Or is it a negative in that they can't become full-time? Or do they like having the flexibility of having the part-time?
They like having the flexibility, and probably the last 3 out of 5 full-time staff that we've hired that come directly off of our part-time list.
Okay.
So they're in the system, and it's just easy transition for us. But yeah, they come into our system and learn the ins and outs, and the full-time spot comes open, and we're
Right.
fortunate they want it.
Right.
And Chief, since you're there at the podium, could you explain what the hazardous duty multiplier is for folks who are listening?
Sure. Currently, the multiplier for us is 1.7. So Jess, you might have to help me here.
Meaning.
So,
William's here because he knows. all
Oh,
the-
yeah, it's so your
You get a higher.
compensation, it'll be a higher pay on
High-
your retirement.
up
So we go from
higher
1.7
retirement.
multiplier to 1.85.
Yeah.
I
Multiplier.
see.
We
Okay.
see it as a big recruitment and retention tool.
Great.
Rockingham County is the most recent in our area to go to it.
I believe Harrisonburg.
Harrisonburg's had it for a good while. Rockingham's went to it. Someone spoke of Waynesboro looking
They're looking
into
into
it.
it. I don't know if it's going to be in the proposed budget or not.
Right. But that not only affects the fire department, but
the
police department
police,
as well.
yeah.
So
So it goes from 1.7 to 1.85.
the
in
multi,
retirement.
yes,
And then once you start that, you said, then
yes. Once you're in, you're in.
you're in, you're in. All righty. Thank you so much.
And we have to pay an increased VRS contribution on every employee, but only the fire and PD are getting the extra benefit. That's how it works.
You pay for everyone.
Yes.
It's a
Every employee-
higher VRS rate for every single employee, but then
Police and fire.
the additional benefits for police and fire.
Like there should be a better workaround here.
That's just how they
Yeah.
calculate
for
it.
you.
Yeah, yeah. Okay, thank you.
Can you advance one more? Yes. And then the next page is operating increases for parks, horticulture, golf, park maintenance, and library that were not funded in the proposed budget. They equal about $66,000. Public Works is 490,000 unfunded. They requested that we unfreeze 3 streets positions that were frozen in FY 23's budget to fund the $3 an hour raise, and we did not have the funds to unfreeze in the proposed 26 budget. Part of those would be covered by the VDOT reimbursement funds, but we would have to come up with local dollars to fund the remaining portion, and we just did not have it to, we did unfreeze the 1 traffic position, and we're also unfreezing a water position that works on the water lines, but we were not able to unfreeze these 3 streets positions. Public Works had also asked for an additional full-time custodian for the courthouse. That is not approved. We approved 1 full-time and 1 part-time. And they requested to add a part-time staff to the building maintenance department. That was not approved. There were 3 vehicles requested in the Public Works Department, 1 for engineering, streets, and building maintenance. We did not fund any new equipment requests in this budget, so they are unfunded at this time. And then there's about $86,000 of operating increases for engineering, public works, admin, streets, traffic engineering and signals, building maintenance and equipment maintenance that remain unfunded. General government, unfunded request.
Can I stop you on the Public Works, just to ask a question?
Yes,
So we have this, the trash pickup automation program that we've just introduced. We have software that provides route optimization. I think we're paying like $30,000 a year for that. But I guess I would expect that there'd be some kind of efficiencies and cost savings that might result from this new program, and either there'd be cash savings or we take that money and put it to one of the positions like the traffic position instead of using new money to fund that. Is
Those are-
there, or do we anticipate any kind of cost savings from the trash pickup automation program?
We hope so, but that would be in our environmental fund. This is our general fund, but
Mr. Dave Irvin is here. You can also, he's standing up. He can speak to that too.
Good evening, Mr. Irvin.
Good evening. As of right now, it's too early to tell what benefits are going to come and what level of efficiency we will achieve. We just finished the trash can rollout, but we have some historical data, about a month's worth. So that's just really not enough to tell to what degree of efficiency we can attain. But that's the beauty of the software, that we will gather that data in those matrix, be able to adjust some routes, things like that. But it's just too early to tell right now.
I'm just thinking that there's a lot of precedent for this type of program in other cities, other communities, and maybe there's some kind of, just typically save them 10%, 20%. Do we have any kind of historical data from other cities that have implemented programs like this?
No, not at the moment. We modeled our entire program, including the same software as the city of Harrisonburg, so we could reach out to them. But we are already looking at other opportunities to use this software for efficiency and other operations that we do, such as the street sweeping. That's an easy thing to do, is put our street sweeper on some specific routes, again, to be more efficient. So as we go forward, it's our intention that will be the next use of the routing software that we intend to use it for. And again, it's too early to tell. We can reach out to Harrisonburg and see what they experienced, and we can get back to you.
Yeah, I look forward to hearing about that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Oh, one quick question, the yard waste
Yes.
containers that are coming out, all that wonderful yard waste we're gonna keep. None of that's gonna go to Augusta County. We're gonna keep that, right?
Yes,
That's what I thought. Okay, I
Yes.
just wanted to make sure.
thank you.
so next slide, general government unfunded requests are 43,545. There was a request to update the citizens guide of 10,000 that remains unfunded. And then there are operating increases requested from the assessor, city council, budget, city manager, human resources, registrar and risk management, 33,000 that remain unfunded. The community development area unfunded operating request of 98,210, with almost 64,000 of that being in tourism. Economic development operating increases of 27,455, and then planning operating increases of 6,805 remain unfunded. And this year we thought that maybe we could start increasing our general fund transfer and adding 980,000, but that is not possible. So it remains unfunded.
Maybe before we retire,
Right.
Jesse, we'll see. What was the tourism request? Was it a staff position or?
No,
communication?
she
Out of curiosity.
requested 2 international trips, which we did not approve. And then an increase in advertising
Yeah,
that we did not approve the whole increase. That was the biggest things.
thank you.
It's just the detail of the unfunded outside agencies of 167,375. Shenandoah Community Capital Fund, unfunded at 10,000. Staunton Historic Staunton Foundation requested an increase of 5,000. We kept them at level funding. Woodrow Wilson Presidential Library requested an increase of 5,000. We kept them at level funding at 5,000. Shen Arts requested $1,000 increase. That was not approved. And the Virginia Cooperative Extension 4-H, we kept at level funding. The next 6, New Directions, Arcadia, the Warm Shelter, Arrow Project, Shenandoah Valley Small Business Development, and the YMCA are 6 new requests that were not funded in this budget.
I have a question. Is there a deadline for request for funding for the bid budget for these outside groups?
Yes, it was in January, the end of January.
And what end of January? Okay.
And if I could interrupt, Councilmember Arrowood, would you like to discuss what we had talked about the other?
Yeah, well, we had created a fund in the past for,
Go back one more. Sorry, thank you.
oh, is it on there or something?
No, it's
Oh,
not
oh,
on
just
there.
on-
It's
okay.
just,
Yeah,
I
it-
just wanted,
it's-
yeah.
Yeah, we had created a fund in the past with the idea of responding to immediate needs. Like community needs.
$50,000
It was a
that we were talking
$50,000 fund, which we have no requirement on. I mean, so we could keep that in mind if we want to meet some of these needs. And honestly, since there are no restrictions on it whatsoever, right?
Well, the only restriction, I mean, there are, I would say this restrictions would be the same restrictions as far as charitable nonprofit organizations. I mean,
Yeah.
that would, it would be the same restrictions that we use for any type of for gift or grant. Other than that, no, you all can basically decide who you would like to give these funds to, preferably the member when we had the discussion about the $50,000, make sure that it's going for Staunton residents or for Staunton itself.
Yeah.
So remember that discussion as well, which all these agencies, at one level are serving Staunton residents.
And a lot of these agencies have been left in an uncomfortable situation with the failure of the local United Way, too. So that's something that's crunched them as well, too. So we may want to consider what we can do. It was also represented to me that by a couple of these that not necessarily, they would obviously love this full request, but that any even token donation from the city would help a lot with them for fundraising, to say kind of a, showing that the city is giving support on some level and sees them as a viable organization. So something for us to consider.
Yeah, I want to echo that. I think New Direction, Arrow, and YMCA childcare services were all mentioned in the article today about the United Way loss of funding. Obviously, the YMCA has the big project they're working on that would go a long way in adding additional childcare options for our community. I think it's also worth noting that Arcadia project, they have a $1.5 million grant from the state of Virginia that's going to go away if they can't deliver. So that's $1.5 million that could go towards investing in our downtown. That's on the line as well.
And that would be in the category of economic development, in that too. Now YMCA, I had thought that we could maybe meet that in a separate way with sort of an in-kind by being able to, as they move forward with construction, we can waive connection fees on that.
So
Do we
I
have
don't
the
believe
ability
there's a
to
legal
do-
mechanism to do that.
Now, is there not, now we lobbied the General Assembly.
That was
that.
for Uniontown.
Oh, specifically only for Uniontown.
Yes, and if-
Okay. I
unless
thought
they're
that we
building
had a
affordable housing
separate-
on that site.
Well, we could ask. No, it's kidding. Okay.
Well,
so,
I will
yeah.
just, I will say this about that project, and Mr. Rhodes is here. The city has yet to receive or review any site plan information on that project yet. So we don't.
Oh, true. We're not in that stage at all.
Exactly. So, but again, I don't believe there's a legal mechanism to do what you're suggesting.
Okay, so we do not have the ability to waive it. It was specifically only.
If
for that
council were
community.
interested in helping them cover their building permit fees, whatever they may be, whatever is approved regarding that project, probably the best way to handle that would be through a direct grant to them, which then they could apply to building permit fees if they wanted to do that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, it just seems like I don't know. I'd be interested to know why YMCA is asking for that number specifically, because that is a huge facility. And I just, YMCA's funding is opaque to me. So. Okay, well, something to think about going forward. I mean, a little bit of city support goes a long way in fundraising for a lot of these organizations.
I see Miss Wagner from the Arcadia project here. Can she approach to talk about the possible loss of a grant? Am I correct, Miss Wagner? Is that possible right now or no?
I'm sorry, I just don't think that's appropriate
Okay.
right now, but thank
I
you.
wasn't
We
sure.
don't have any
Okay.
other representatives, but
Okay.
thank you.
I don't know how accurate this is, but my understanding is it has to be expended within by end of 2026, or it's at risk of being lost.
Yes.
Yeah, that's my understanding as well. And so that's one to look at closely. It's a real anchor of downtown, could spur additional economic development. I'd like to find a way to fund some of these to some extent, as other councilors have mentioned, some of these new requests.
So because we only have 50,000 and we have 6, why are we not divided up between the 6? And that way nobody's left
Well-
out. Because if you don't, somebody's going to get something and somebody's not. So this way we're helping all 6. Not meeting what they're asking for, but
Right.
because we don't have it.
Oh.
I mean, otherwise we don't give, I mean,
That's fair.
It's
Don't
something
have
to,
it.
It's definitely worth a conversation.
something to look at.
Yeah.
But-
Each
well-
separate organization. Go ahead.
I would just like to say that we're not done with the presentation. There's money maybe that we're going to save in other areas of the government. And this might be something that we want to hold on to. But yeah, we can, do you want to decide this right now?
That's
Or-
No.
just
No,
something to
we
think
don't
about now.
wanna
I
Put
just-
decide it,
put a
but-
pin in it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I
it's
mean,
an
I agree.
idea.
This is set aside for
Discussion.
nonprofits for,
Put it on the bike rack. You
It's-
ever heard that?
Yeah.
Not the
But-
parking lot.
So
bike rack.
1.17.
Something I mentioned to the city manager about this, I think would be helpful for the future, where there's so many requests and so many needs from outside agencies. It would be helpful to have some kind of a scoring system,
Mhm.
with some criteria that we set up, benefit the community. Are they, are there synergies that they've explored with other related agencies? Are they working with them? Have they pursued and obtained other grants? Just things like that, where we could sort of look at the scoring and kind of say, so it goes beyond kind of a gut feel. Yeah, I think this is the
Yeah,
one to do.
yeah. Yeah,
It's hard to sort of look at the list and, objectively
Uh-huh.
say this one, but not this one. And
So we had some conversation with CAPSAW because that's what they do. They look at things, they look at evidence-based information to make decisions about who they're funding. And so that could be one way to look at this, is to have them assist us kind of review these things. But then we would need kind of understand from you all and get input from staff. It's like, what do we want to see? What would you want to kind of base that on? And so this process has improved a lot in the last couple of years, to be honest. Before, it was literally an email that was sent to the CFO. We've included more information, asked for more information as far as narrative, justification, delivery of services, budget history. And so we're always looking for ways to improve this, but to have some type of scorecard that looks at things a little bit more objectively, at least to help drive some initial decisions and to help you all, kind of say,
Yeah.
okay, that looks like something that would definitely benefit Staunton, and maybe this doesn't over
Right.
here.
right.
And I know Capsol has a really good model for how they do that. So that's, Anna Levitt's a really good resource in that way.
Yes, I
Yeah,
was
we're-
actually just on a board meeting with CAPSAW before I came out here, and we're in the process of looking at the grant applications right now for $35,000 a piece. And there is some overlap with some of these organizations. So just another thing to consider,
Yeah.
revenue streams that they might get.
Yeah,
And
that would
some of
be
them overlap with
interesting.
CDBG too.
Mhm.
So
Yeah.
we try to capture all that
Yeah.
too and
Yeah.
say, well, where are you receiving other funding sources?
Yeah, I mean, that's what I was thinking when I said, let's listen and because, right, there are the CDBG funds and this money is coming directly from our general fund. And then there's CAPSA grants. And so, yeah, looking at how many, again, Staunton residents are served, I think that's how these were chosen, what the criteria was for funding some, not funding others. Yeah, I think having a scorecard or, yeah. But I definitely think keeping that 50,000 to put that toward some of these agencies that didn't get funding would be a good
But it's,
idea.
yeah, it's not, I mean, we don't have to disperse of
But-
all of it.
Right. We could see it as an emergency fund too, not all, if we didn't disperse all of it. Does anybody else
Do you
want?
want to talk about the community foundation? Give them the 50,000 to the community foundation.
No, okay. Yeah, so and the nice thing about the $50,000 is that it's funding in the budget right now, so it doesn't affect FY '26 as much. But we've already told you, whatever you don't spend this fiscal year will carry over into FY '26 to utilize in the next fiscal year, because this budget does not include an additional $50,000.
right.
So
Yeah.
that's what you have at your discretion.
And I did reach out to the Community Foundation about, because they're the ones managing the fund set up to fill in the, I think it was a total of 141,000 that when the funding went away for United Way on that. But that is a SAW region fund. That is not just us. And so it's not applicable. We initially, I thought, oh, wonderful, give it to Community Foundation, let them deal with it. But that's not.
So interestingly, and I spoke to Mr. Airwood about this, when we had the CARES funding, we did contract with Community Foundation to disperse, I think,
Mhm.
$250,000 in CARES money. So they did that whole process. They allocated the dollars. The parameters were really clear. That was the COVID money, so it
Yeah.
had to be very, very strictly adhered to. And they helped manage that process for us, which was great because we did not have the expertise or the staff to do that. And so we were able to push out $250,000 of CARES money to various nonprofits as they kind of worked through the pandemic at that time. And the Community Foundation was critical. They did that for us, frankly. We had an MOU. I found the MOU today because I was thinking about this conversation. So that worked really well. And that was just for Staunton at that time. Yep.
So going forward, for next week, I guess, to hone this budget, looking at some of these organizations that did get funding and then,
Something to talk
and
about.
then, yeah, and then looking at other sources of money where we could find the funding for some of them, but
It just depends
looking
on
at the
what level,
justification, yeah, looking at the
sure.
justifications
What have they
according
already
to,
found?
yeah. Why was this one not chosen for something and why was this one chosen for funding? And maybe it was just because they were new and hadn't been funded before, so.
I think,
yeah,
I think in those cases, that was, that a
Probably
lot of,
it.
that was it. I
Yeah.
mean,
And some of it
Yeah.
was we looked at their financials and if they had enough revenue to cover their expenditures, we did not make them a
I see.
priority.
So, yeah, see, this is a kind, yeah, I mean, it's nice to know like, why didn't some get money and why did some get funded?
yeah, well, the ones that have been historically funded received funding at some level. I mean, they either received their full request, and in some cases, we look at the agency as an extension of a city department. So Headwaters, for instance, does a lot of work like dam inspections. And so that is pretty critical to what we're doing. And that's also a regional agency. So Augusta County and Waynesboro fund them as well. So that's almost like an extension of what we're doing. So, and that's not, those aren't on this list, but, there's several, like the PDC, the Plain Vista Commission, that is a
Mhm.
formula driven. So it just kind of depends on the relationship. It depends on what their function is. The ones that are more human services based are probably a little bit more complicated because of what they're doing. And we
there's-
definitely don't play any role in that as a city. So and we understand that a lot of these applied for funding because of the loss of federal funds or the anticipation that they would be losing federal funds or some other grants. And that's, their applications said as much in some cases.
It would be interesting to know if like, a theoretical organization, not any of these, asked us for $50,000. Do they need a total of $50,000? And did they ask us and did they ask CAPSAW and did they ask everybody? And if, has that been filled in? Is that their total amount of need or is that what they see as potentially our share? So it's something to think about it, but it's more info needed.
Thank you for those explanations. Anybody else? All righty, thank you.
So we're going to move into the CIP. This is the amount that would be funded from a future budget amendment with FY 25 carryover of 3.6 million. A lot of these are reserves that you've seen in the past. There's also the new reserves that I mentioned for Fire Station 1, Police Department relocation. There are particular named projects like the Gypsy Hill Park power hookups, the Crossing Way Park and Ride lighting. Increasing the sidewalk reserve, we talked about that, adding the housing reserve, the Parks and Rec equipment reserve, golf carts. I know that is a hot topic and I have a few more slides on that a little later. And then this is the last year we're funding that Parks and Rec Public Use Facilities Reserve at the 600,000. That will be dropping down to help offset the cost that we're putting aside for fire and PD. The schools did request, typically we fund them $100,000 out of our general fund for building maintenance. They asked that we start contributing $50,000 toward bus replacements to help them offset what they are contributing to replace, I believe, one bus a year. And then $20,000 to help toward their parking lot paving reserve to help fund that shortfall over the next 5 years. And so those are currently in our proposed FY 26 CIP. Are there any questions before I move on?
I'm sorry, yeah, you said this is our last year that we're going to be funding the $600,000 level for Parks and Rec use facilities. How much do we have in there now? Would that be 1,200?
So
1.2
in that
million?
fund, that is also where we are appropriating the interest that we're earning on our CIP funds, which includes our ARPA funds that have yet to be spent. Let's see, to almost $4 million. That is where the funding will come from for the Gypsy Hill Park pool house replacement and the bathroom renovations in the parks, Montgomery Hall Park pool house renovation and the pump house. That is the first projects scheduled with those particular funds. So the amount funded in the proposed budget with a general fund transfer, we have the 3 reserved that we set up, I believe, in FY 24's budget of 287, 261, which was the value of the penny at that point in time for the library, the West End, and the Uniontown reserves. In addition, this proposed budget adds 2 cents for infrastructure repairs and improvements, with the first priority being the tunnels under the wharf. There are 2 projects that we are funding out of reserves that we've already set aside, the West End bus shelters and the Edgewood sidewalks. The West End bus shelters would come out of the West End reserve and the sidewalks would come out of our sidewalk reserve. And then we have funding for VDOT in the amount of almost $1.8 million for high visibility crosswalks. And then that the next line is the VDOT Smart Scale of $3.6 million toward the Edgewood sidewalk.
This one's stable. So far as we know, okay.
Oh, yeah, okay, as far as we know.
Could
Yeah.
I ask to jump back?
Mhm.
Could I ask to jump back to one item? Sorry, back on this $3.6 million funded from future budget amendment. The school allocations that you mentioned, school building maintenance, 100,000, 50,000 for school bus replacement, 20,000 for school parking lot. So this is from our general fund in addition to what we appropriate for the overall school budget. Is that right?
Yes, that is in addition to the transfer for education.
Okay.
And the rest
Thank
of
you.
their CIP would be funded out of their reserves or their carryover. This is just our share coming from a general fund into their CIP.
And so what was the precedent on this? Why do you know what the logic or what the precedent is for us funding these particular items from general fund?
Just to help them meet their reserves and their needs. Yeah, the 100,000 has been funded for many years. The 50 and the 20 are new because they did not have the reserves to fully fund their 5-year replacement for the buses and fully fund the parking lot paving.
And so again, just learning all this stuff. So when they're asking for the 50,000 reserve and the 20,000 reserve, is that, then they would expect that every year from us?
Yes.
What was their carryover this year after their budget?
Their FY '24
Yeah,
carryover,
well, yeah, the
I believe it is, I don't know exactly. I don't have it in front of me. It's a little over $1 million, I think,
And so just to
in their
clarify,
fund balance.
for so this is in addition to the fact that we've fully funded their budget. Like,
Yes,
okay.
it is. It's in addition to the $1.6 million increase to the local contribution to schools.
Okay. Sorry, I have one more
So
question.
so that, this doesn't include the 9.5% increase.
No, this is in addition to
addition
that.
to.
And just going back to the police department, career development and the fire department positions,
Mhm.
like even if we were the minimum of 3 for 225,000, like that would be a year at that point to fund those positions.
Yes.
Okay.
and we have the 1.174. There'll be a future budget amendment coming in that's unencumbered.
Yes. From the crossing sales, that's what you're
Yes.
referring to?
Yeah.
Yes, you do have that.
Alice, she's like.
And did you say we've been funding the 100,000 a year for the school building maintenance reserve?
Yes. I don't know how far back it goes, but it has been in here. Yes.
Would that be before the current funding?
Yeah.
Formula?
Yes.
Okay, when they had a less advantageous funding formula, we had to make up more.
Yes. And it's to help them with HVAC replacements, roof replacements, large repairs like that.
Questions? Thank you, Ms. Myers.
So the next couple of slides will be on the golf carts. There was $60,000 requested to start a golf cart replacement reserve. So I wanted to walk you through just information about the golf carts so that you can make the best decision. So in 2021, we purchased 40 golf carts for $198,200. We were able to sell 18 of the old golf carts for $44,178. So the net cost of the new golf carts was $154,022. Golf carts, user fees pay for those because the user must pay to rent the golf cart. The city did have to front the money for the large purchase, but then the golf carts have already paid for themselves. So I have a chart there that shows what the average annual revenue was prior to the purchase of the golf carts and what it has been in the 3 fiscal years since the purchase of the golf carts. And then the last column is the annual increase in the golf cart revenue. So the golf cart revenue went from about $69,000 a year to $143,000, which is about 107% increase. And so if you just use that line alone, the payback period for the golf carts were 2 years and 1 month. But in theory, the golf carts allowed us to increase our green fees, the amount that we collect for people playing golf, by 355% on average, or $27,512 a year. And then golf memberships increased by 88%, going from $57,000 a year to $107,000 a year. So all those revenues combined, we're seeing an increase on average of $152,000 a year. So if you use the total figure, the payback period was about a year that they paid for themselves. So this is some information that was requested by a council member on this slide. So currently we have a fleet of 52 carts. According to Mr. Tuttle, the optimal fleet is 60. PGA guidelines suggest a cart should last 7 to 10 years due to our very steep terrain. Carts generally are optimal for like 6 to 7 years. We're using an estimated cart cost of $6,000. And any reserve that we would not spend out of this would just carry over into the next year. So used carts are auctioned off on Gov Deals. So I can't tell you what they would go for because it depends on what the bid is at that time. But I did want to let you know that the carts that were auctioned off at the end of 2021 and beginning of 2022 brought on average of $2,454. Now, we don't know how much of that was due to the pandemic and it was hard to get equipment at that time, and maybe they went for a little higher than what they would go for now. Any funds that are received from the sales of the golf cart are returned to the general fund. They do not go to golf. They return to the revenue line called surplus sales. And so I was asked to lay out like what a 5-year plan would look like. So if this funding was approved in the CIP, FY26, we would replace the 10 oldest carts. These were carts that we kept before, like when we bought the ones in 2021. These were the older carts that were in the best shape that we kept. In 2026, they'll be about 15 years old at that time when we replace those carts. 2027, we would replace the 2 remaining oldest carts. They would be 16 years old at that point. And then we would add the 8 carts to get us to a fleet of 60. FY28 is when we would begin replacing 10 of the, we'll say the worst carts from the lot that we bought in 2021. They'd be about 6 years old at that point. And I just want to note that if they're still in really good shape and we don't need to replace 10 that we won't, we would only replace those that are not able to earn their revenue because they're not in great shape. So if we did not replace all 10, we would buy what we needed and keep the funds in there as those carts age. And then we would go and replace 10 the following year. Of course, they would get 7 years old at that time and then 8 years old and so on and so forth.
Question is probably Mr. Tuttle's here. Go back and asked, when we replaced the golf carts the first time in 2021, how old were they at that time
I
that
can answer
the
that.
40 was replaced? Can you?
So the average age of those carts that bought 2,454 were 22 years old.
They was 22 years old.
The older they get, the more expensive they are to keep running with replacement motors, springs, axles, you name it. They're quite expensive to maintain the older they get.
So how many carts was there at that time in
Well,
the fleet?
I can go back in history. Originally, it was the 60, and
60.
we had what I have recommended to Ms. Moyer with the reserve fund to the cart replacement program, and we had that in place. 2008, we stopped doing that, and there was a period of probably 10 years we didn't buy a cart. And then when we would buy carts, it'd be 2 or 3 at a time. So actually running at that, before we got the new ones, I think we were at 22 carts. A lot of carts were in the shop. Out of those 22, wouldn't pull the hills. Some of them wouldn't pull the hills. I can't stress enough that the carts are the revenue generator for the course. You know, if you're a member, you're not paying a green fee, but you're still paying a cart fee. And those tournaments, you know, we have big tournaments now due to that. And the way we operate our fleet now, those older carts are still in the fleet. Some of them are not used as much. They're in the shop a lot, but we rotate out. So the carts are equally used throughout. So we don't use the 40 brand new ones all the time. We try to mix it up with the other ones that we have from the old fleet.
So I have another question. So I know Ms. Moyers did this 5-year plan, and she said 6 years to replace carts starting at 6 years old. Would that be sufficient, or could we push that out to 8 years or 10 years?
Again, the longer you push it out, your carts are going to we're going to start having a lot of maintenance issues.
What do maintenance issues look like? What do you mean replacing parts? Or
Motors
just take?
or
Yeah.
engines, just you say, you're looking at a couple thousand. Springs are probably 1,000. And also keep in mind the terrain at Gypsy Hill is uncommon. It's hilly. Every hole is a hill. And the carts, they wear down quick.
And Mr. Tuttle, I know you said 60 is optimal, but with 18 holes, that would mean over 3 carts per hole if everybody were playing at every hole. So is that what you're?
Well,
Like-
I'm looking like tournaments, big, last weekend we were
Yeah.
full. People were actually waiting for a cart.
Mhm.
So yeah, I mean, 60 is optimum. That's the PGA optimum. I mean, it's not set in stone. You've got to have 60. We're making it do with the 52, but at times it's putting a strain on the pro shop. And again, out of those 52, I can't guarantee you that those old ones are all up there, you know, in rotation. I know we have 2 down at the shop right now, at the maintenance shop.
Mr. Tuttle, I'm
Thank
sure
you.
this is somewhere in some of these packets, but off the top of your head, like what, how many members are there?
Don't hold me to it.
We have that somewhere, yeah.
It's over
Next
100.
slide, please.
Before the carts, we had 19.
Okay, there we go.
Only 19 members?
Only 19 members before we purchased the carts. Not now. We have a lot more than 19 now. It's,
Yeah, I looked at that data pretty recently. I want to say it's 125, something like that.
I think that's accurate. And we're getting, you know, that we're getting new members now. When we first got the carts, we did a introductory offer, a one-time, try to get interest back in the course because we had lost it. We did a $300 membership for the year, which was a one-time, and then memberships really shot up. But then the next year, knowing what the 300 is not going to be, it was 450 the following year. And I'm sure we lost some. They didn't play as much as they thought, but play revenue since the carts has been fantastic.
And do we have a like visitor counts at all? I mean, I know not everybody's a member. Some people just come to play. like-
I think we did that number on as far as city residents that are members. It was seven,
no.
it was 80, I think 81 city residents were member. Don't hold me to that.
Oh,
I
it's
did that.
fine.
a
I
couple
just
months
mean
back.
like general people that might not be members, but just come to play.
Well,
like
we
the
get a lot of
visitor.
walk-in play. I don't have the number right now. It's, you know, we get a lot of play from all over. It's pretty steady and the numbers show that, you know, the green fees are up.
We can get those numbers for
Our
you
point
all.
of sale system tracks.
Yeah.
Yeah, we
Where
can,
you're
we can
from.
get, sure.
But looking
Yeah,
at this
isn't
chart,
it?
you see how the revenue has grown. So clearly membership is going up, play is going up. Obviously golf cart rentals has gone up because there's more carts and people, the carts are good carts. And so this chart shows you that revenue and the average in the 3 years since the carts were purchased. But we can get you the numbers, like the
Mhm.
data as far as players and membership, and we do have that. So, because Chris was here, when were you here in December? And I think you provided some of
Yeah,
that
we have
information.
it. Yeah.
How old
Uh,
is the golf course?
It
Just in
is over
general?
100 years old. It was 1919, I believe, was the first 9 holes. I will note too that we lost a 4-month period of prime golf season 2 years ago when we had that really bad storm that took out over 100 trees in the park. So basically we lost that whole summer, or the majority of it. So our numbers would be even better with that.
So the question that, you know, I originally asked, could we do a 5-year plan like this and keep that in place as far as replacement of the golf course? Replacement of the carts. Do a plan like this where we're doing so many every year or
Right,
every other
and-
year.
And like Ms. Moyer said, if there's a year where we're not, you know, we need 4 instead of 10, we'll get 4.
So I was asked to come up with a plan, like what would it look like if we did 50,000 a year instead of 60? So at 50,000, based on a $6,000 estimate, we could replace 8. So in the first year, we would place 8 of those 15-year-old units. And then the FY27, we would replace the remaining 4, which would be 16 years old at that time. And then we would get 4 of the new ones to add to the fleet. FY28, we would add the other 4 new ones. And then we would start, we would replace 4 of the ones that were bought in 2021. Then FY29, we would start with 8-year replacement of those that were bought in 2021. They would be at 7 years old at that time.
And just to be clear, whatever we are fronting for the replacement of the cards, say it's 8 or 10, it's just $50,000, $60,000, whatever that is. Most of that comes right back into the city general fund as a result of revenues gained from rental of the carts. Is that right?
Correct.
Yes.
Last time, and I believe you said it was in December that we got into this, we talked about costs associated with the golf course. It was trying to track that versus income on the whole thing. And it would be good to see that. I mean, because we just want to see that we're getting payback from our investment. And this is, I mean, this shows directly from the carts themselves, but I mean, it also, we had talked before about, it included all golf employees and that. The only part that you said is difficult to track is that there are two guys that mow everything, including the golf carts, but also the rest of the parks.
Well, in the golf shop, that's in the golf budget includes the golf pro salary and his assistants or
Mhm.
part-time. Park maintenance in another division provides the maintenance, like we do for the Gypsy Hill Park, Montgomery Hall Park. They're the guys that mow it. So there's no one in the golf shop that actually out mowing, cutting greens or.
Right, that's the one part that's hard to specifically track just because it's just considered part of the park.
Right, and it varies in who I have up there working. There's two guys that are all the time up there when it's golf season, but other times they're doing various things in the parks.
Yeah, that's part of our cost allocation, which would also include part of Chris's time, my time, general government services. It's not charged directly to the cost, the golf department, but we do calculate like an overhead cost for all of our city departments.
It'd be good to
Yeah.
see it again.
Yeah, the chart indicates clearly that the golf carts are an investment, not an expense, certainly. And also another thing about the golf carts, I know for years that the golf course has been an amazing fundraiser for the Lee or the Staunton Athletic
yeah.
Department. Every year, the golf tournament raises thousands of dollars
Sure.
for the athletics and numerous other charities, including the Red Cross, that help support local charities in the city of Staunton as well. So it serves the community
Yes.
well.
More questions? Thank you, Mr. Tuttle. I appreciate it. Any more questions on? I actually wonder if we could go back to page 21. The housing reserve, $30,000 for the housing reserve. That's, I guess, a new line item. Is that for our salary? Is that for just a
I think-
placeholder?
Yeah, so that's a placeholder. So as
Mhm.
Ms. Joyce, the housing work group completes their work, then she will be back in July, late summer to provide those recommendations. This is really just a placeholder to say, okay, we have a fund now, we can start building the fund, whatever that can go to. And so really it's just kind of building that capacity to do something with those recommendations once you have those in your hand. So it's not salaries. We don't put salaries in the budget, in the
Right, in
CIP
CIP, no.
necessarily.
Right.
So, but it's really just for now, a placeholder for now, just thinking ahead as to what you all might want to fund coming out of that housing study.
And it is scheduled to increase over the 5-year plan. It starts at 30 and I believe it goes up by 5,000 each year.
It's not unusual to see this in municipal
When something
budgets.
starts
Yeah,
and you're getting something going.
or even a housing fund. I mean, Charlottesville's had a housing fund for probably 2 decades now.
Yeah,
So
right,
not unusual.
right.
It's also, I mean, part of the housing workforce, work group and on that is to move forward with a housing commission if we're able to do that in the immediate on that, but that would also be determining how to place HUD funding, other funding as well too. So that's not solely it going towards housing. Not that I'm telling you, but in general, Michelle.
Thank you,
So
Vice Mayor.
yeah, so I mean, it would be like you said, a placeholder on that, but also it would be about direction and allocation of state and federal funds. However uncertain those can be.
All righty. Thank you very much. All righty.
Back to 25.
Slide 25 was in the introduction of the proposed budget, and that is the 2 cents, 657,000 for infrastructure. with the focus on the creek tunnels that run under the wharf. The next slide was also in the introduction, just some more details on the underground storm water creek tunnels. And that Wiley Wilson is continuing their investigation or their evaluation, I should say. And I have not heard any updates at this time. We're still waiting on them
I'll
to
be
finish.
providing an update at next week's council meeting. I know they're not quite completed with their work yet, so I'm gonna say what I can about what has been happening in the past month, frankly. A lot's happened, so that I will be reporting out on that at the April 10th meeting with a little bit more information.
Seeing any new cones.
Well, we kind of got rid of some of the
Yeah.
It was nice, and I think folks were happy when we opened up the eastern part of the wharf parking lot. And I'll just give a little preview. We are going to be improving signage out there to help direct people to the various parking areas. So that should be helpful. We've pulled in the monthly parkers into the Johnson Street garage as best as possible. And of course, we've kind of we've put the Johnson and the New Street back on a paid structure. The wharf, of course, remains free. And this will be an opportunity. I mean, it's more than about the tunnels now. It's about an opportunity to look at parking as a whole, especially when the county leaves downtown, the county court system. And so staff will be looking at that as well, kind of putting all this together. It's just an opportunity to look at that and to really study what's happening with downtown parking. But going back to the tunnels, yeah, I'll report out what I can next week. And again, I believe this is going to be a very long-term process. Yeah, so, I hope soon we'll be able to tell folks how long it'll look like that out there and what needs to happen. But again, Wiley Wilson continues to do their work to provide that information.
Any word on counts for parking garage?
No,
Oh,
not yet.
Okay.
That is good data to try to get. We're working on and figuring out a way to do that. So.
I'm not saying, obviously, we need every penny we can get for our future infrastructure needs. Anyone can just look at the CIP and find it and know that. But I'm curious, given the longer term schedule of this particular issue, I understand we want to build a base for the unknown, a reserve for the unknown, but just looking at the CIP and the number of reserves we have now, I mean, just looking at new sidewalks, bike ped, Greenway, West End, Uniontown Library, Parks and Rec. I mean, we're at $5.5 million without a definitive project. So I'm just wondering, and it's great that we can put that stuff and earn interest, but from a taxpayer standpoint, are we relying too much on not having a specific project in mind yet? I don't know what the answer is. I'm just throwing it out there.
Yeah.
So I know two of those projects, West End and the library, we doesn't have any specifics yet.
That's not exactly true. The library is the library was all about doing the space needs assessment for the library. That was the initiative behind the reserve. And that study is going to be starting. They're looking at they're doing a structural analysis of the library first, and then they'll be doing the space needs analysis. So that particular reserve was to respond to that, because the last time that was done, it was, I don't know, 10 or so years ago, and it was a $7 million project, but that's 10 years old. So we knew that we had to look at that again as far as what the needs of the library are. So at that time, that's why council decided that 2 years ago to set up that reserve. So there is a planned project for the library. Yes, there is. West End, realize that the study has been completed. We have a courthouse that we're building out there, and we also have the rest of that site, frankly, to worry about and to develop it into something. So those potentially could be funds that are dedicated to that, whatever that site looks like at some point. And then there's other recommendations in the West End that we could probably try to start to point to as far as those reserves. So that's when those reserves were set up, those items were in mind at that time.
So my question wasn't just to My question was to get what you just said on
Yeah,
record,
co-
so that
absolutely, yeah.
when those things come up, because he has pointed those out, that those do have projects, and we set that up specifically to hold on to that, to when it comes, we have the money to do that. Now,
That was
as
the
you
intent,
can
yes.
go down the line, we can discuss the other ones.
No, I mean, we need all of these. I'm just saying
Right.
we are piggy banking money, which is not a bad thing in any way. I'm just saying that there's a balance here between, you know, collecting taxes from our citizens and not expending those collections. It's just a balancing act.
Right, and
to see
those
some-
questions gonna be asked. They're gonna be asked.
I
So
see
we
some
need to have-
traction.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, the alternative is to wait till
Citizens.
things break and then have to fix it, and fund it on an emergency basis. So I think it's fiscally responsible to set money aside for identified needs. You know, the West End alone, projects identified in their potential projects, you know, vastly exceed the amount of money that we are setting aside. So it's a good thing to plan for the future and to fund the needs.
Well, I think the next topic we're going to talk about speaks to that perfectly. Honestly, which is the Gypsy Hill Park Pool House, which is well, I'll let Jesse speak to this, but we have a lot of concerns
So
about
the
this
next
building.
few slides relate to the Gypsy Hill Park Pool House and why we are recommending that it be replaced. But first, we want to make sure that you know it provides a lot of benefits for our community as an affordable place for families and kids to enjoy recreation time. I got the stats from Mr. Tuttle. There's about 18,000 visits to the pool during the season. There's 2,400 summer camp swims, about 500 lap swims and 400 pool rental swims. So the next page speaks to why we are recommending replacement. As you know, when we got the ARPA funds, refreshing the Gypsy Hill Park Pool House was one of the projects we had set money aside, thinking that we would do fresh paint, flooring, fixtures. But once the preliminary architectural report came back, it showed structural integrity issues with steel joists having corrosions. There were some immediate recommendations from our inspections department that we had to put in place so the pool could open that season to shore up the steps was the biggest one. There are degradation, exterior deterioration of the walls. Lack of accessibility was noted with the failing retaining wall, and current fixtures do not meet building code standards. They showed there was a overall functionality issue with the showers and the bathrooms being on the upper level instead of on the same level as the pool deck. The next couple slides are pictures that I've taken of our current facility. You can see the corrosion on the steel flooring deck and the joists. The stairs pulling away from the building. The bottom right-hand corner is the inside, I believe, of the women's bathroom, showing that there is a lift to get into the shower, not making it accessible for those that are bound to a wheelchair. On the next slide, there are pictures from the outside of the building of the failing concrete. The one on the bottom right is I believe that is the walkway, the retaining wall, and then the stairs that had the rusting steel. So these are just some of the pictures of our current facility. In our recommendation, you either have to do major repairs, replace the facility, or in the near future, we will have to close it.
How near?
It's hard to put a time limit. I can't predict the future. They were wanting us to do, we did immediate repairs that would buy us like a couple years. They said to go in and repair the recommendation, if you repair some of the things that are wrong, you could get maybe 5 more years out of it.
Is
So,
it safe for use now, say over the current year?
yes, things were put in place to shore up the steps, which was their main concern for the last pool season. And yes, it was safe to open in 24 and 25, but we just feel a little unsafe pushing the limit on that, knowing what we know now.
So the money's in the reserve now. I think this kind of goes like to
It's
Adam's
it's
point.
its own
So-
project.
So
Yeah.
when do we start? Are we breaking ground?
It originally
Like,
started,
let's go. I think people need to see it.
So this reserve originally started as the Moxie Reserve, but it has since been renamed Parks and Rec Public Use Facilities. And so this has become one of our number one priorities based on what we know now. And this is also where we're putting the interest that we earned on our CIP funds, which a lot of that is ARPA funds that have not been expended. So about 67% of this construction will be funded with interest that we've been able to earn due to the market performing pretty good. And we invested some of the cash we had on hand in the Virginia investment pool, which originally started earning 5.5%. It has since dropped to about 4.4%, but it's still a very decent rate on our CIP fund balance. And a lot of the design costs were funded with ARPA funds. So yeah, this is why we are recommending the replacement of this facility.
Certainly needs to be replaced. Do you know when it would go to bid? Do you have a general estimate on that?
So we had a meeting about a 65% design meeting, I believe it was like a month or so ago. The thinking is that we would put it out to bid early summer, I believe. Don't quote me on that, but the thinking is they would start construction as soon as the 2025 season ended, with hope that we would open up the new facility when the 2026 season began.
I mean, it's a definite need project. I think it's great. It's as we talked about, it's a facility that's used part of the year on that. My concern isn't the project itself, but we've just seen such strange construction environment with ARPA funds still in the system.
Yes, I am worried about that.
Our estimate for the Gypsy Hill bathroom renovations was 250, 275,
Yes.
one bid 897. I just don't know if I don't know. I'm just worried that we won't have good competitive bidding. I mean, it seems that major projects like our courthouse, that was very competitive with 4 good bids. Minor projects, I mean, schools were able to get 1 bid from the same company for each phase. Like I said, the bathrooms, other things, we've just had to say, oh, we can't even do that right now. It's unrealistic. That is my concern. I mean, and that ARPA fund all had to be entailed end of calendar, right? And
Yes.
so now we're seeing doing those projects this year.
I have the same concerns that the bid will come in higher than what we have budgeted, so.
And right, for the projects that ARPA money was being used for, it was use it or lose it. So it didn't feel like really that. We bought, things that probably would have cost us less if we did it later, but we wouldn't be able to afford them normally. This is not using ARPA funding. So that is my concern. I absolutely want to do this. But if we delay even a year, it could take it out of strange construction bidding environment that we're in.
We could also bid it and see how the bids come in and then make that decision at that time.
Is there any possibility of lumping it with the other park items to further entice a bid?
Maybe.
And add
Yeah.
it with the other bathrooms, because you said that you're gonna put all those together anyway.
Yes, allowing 2.5 million for this particular project leaves 1.4 million for all the other projects. Not sure if that is enough because I haven't even gotten that reporter estimates back on what they are recommending.
When you say,
Yeah, go ahead.
when you say 2.5, just give us a general idea. Like, how do you arrive when they say, oh, probably 2.5? Because initially we were saying
They hired,
1.7, 1.8.
Wiley Wilson is doing the design of this pool house and they hired an estimator to come up with the cost, and there is a 10% contingency built in.
Is the pool house safe to be open this summer as it is?
Yeah, we did there were some things done, as Ms. Moyers mentioned, it's absolutely safe this summer. we would need to continue to evaluate it if this goes on much longer. If we delay it a year, for instance, I would certainly want to make sure we get into the building, evaluate it, see if any other things need to be done to get it open the next summer. I mean, we absolutely are going to make sure we would not let people in if we did not believe this was safe. So, and we've already made those fixes, mostly to the ramp, I think. Was it to the ramp?
The
or
stairs,
staircase?
the
The
exterior
staircase,
staircase.
to make sure that those will be okay. And we'll definitely be keeping an eye on this building, over the summer as well. So.
And we're not saying it can't last one more year. It could last a few more years. It's just something that I don't like to take chances. And if we have the money already identified and set aside, as long as the bids came back, okay.
It'd be good to see the bids. That money could gather more interest, as well.
And we will have some additional interest that we can appropriate on the last budget amendment. So it is still gaining interest.
Yeah, I would have no intention to kick this down the road further, but I hate to think that we would end up with a strange bidding environment. That's.
Just a quick question. When we put it out to bid, I mean, do we have to make a move then based on?
No,
this
you do not
bid?
have to accept the
Okay.
bid if it's
Okay.
over your budget.
All right.
Any more questions about the pool house? Thank you, Ms. Moyers.
The last slide is one that you saw during the proposed budget presentation, and that's the Edgewood sidewalk with 400 to 1 million, depending on where the estimate comes in, being funded out of our sidewalk reserve. I don't really have anything additional to say on that one. And that is all that I have.
I just want to make a statement if we, about the pool house, we've seen other projects come in high. If we push them down the road, we have these uncertainties about building things,
Oh,
So,
certainly. Yeah. I mean,
yeah, it's-
inflation or
I mean,
materials or whatever.
Yes, so you don't want to take either a chance on not doing that, something like that, and then you wait to another year and it'll be 3 million instead of 2.
Absolutely. And I would love to be able to bid it, but just with the open mind of being able to say,
I understand.
to not say we're doing it no matter what. But if it seems inflated, it's something that we should be willing to put off because we can put it off. I'm just very concerned about the environment, the bidding environment at the moment.
I am too, because the project was originally estimated at 1.7 and then
Yes.
2.3 and now 2.5. And so I do not want to come back to you and ask for any more money. So I rather the bids come in at the estimated cost.
Right. But I mean, going up to 2.5, is that internal estimate or that? estimate
No,
from
that was,
them?
they hired a professional estimator.
Right. Is that taking into account their view? I mean, is this a project that without ARPA money in the system should be 1.8? I'm not that in touch with commercial building, on that, but I don't know. So it would be just one to watch. I just don't want to
Okay.
say yes to whatever.
Yeah, no, I understand.
So,
Like the roundabout.
The non-roundabout? No, I think we understand. We're in agreement. And so, I mean, we do want to bid this summer. We'd like to see this project happen. So, but if they come back and they're insanely, then we will definitely revisit that and talk to you about that, how to move forward with something.
yeah, it's a good
So,
project. It's
yeah.
something we want to move forward to. It's extremely visible publicly. It'll be a great thing, but yeah, we work responsibly with public money.
Agree. Feedback, questions from council? I know, I've got, go through my notes.
Chris, Mr. Tuttle, if you would approach. You had mentioned something about the new carts having trouble with the hills. Was that in comparison to the old carts
I
in
was
their
speaking of
prime?
the old carts.
The old carts, were-
Yeah, old
the new
carts.
carts aren't having any issues.
There's some that do. There
Some
are
that
some
do.
that do.
Is
Yeah.
that a
It's-
manufacturer issue? Is that a
It-
BMI of
To be
golfers?
tactful, it has a lot to do with the size of the golfers that are riding together.
Yeah, I mean, do we have a chart?
Some of the carts are still the old carts.
Yeah,
And they're the ones that probably have the most trouble.
Maybe you shouldn't have said that out loud.
I don't want to suggest.
Have
that.
you ridden out there? Go get a golf cart and ride the course, and then you'll see.
I haven't ridden it on
why
a golf
they-
course. I've certainly walked it. I was just thinking, when we said that, I misunderstood it because I thought you were saying, oh gosh, the new carts can't
It's
do it.
not
And I
walker
thought,
friendly, let's put it that way.
yeah,
And
Carts are crucial.
yeah. Oh, yeah.
They really
it's-
are.
No, it's a.
I take back what I said about the golf.
And I'll defend you. In the words of my mother who moved here from the Midwest, you people must spend a fortune on brakes here. It's the hills.
It's an aerobic
it's the
exercise
hills.
thing. Yeah, it's.
They call it Gypsy Hill for a reason.
Okay, so new golf carts are great, good quality.
Yeah.
Oh,
yeah.
that's okay. I misunderstood you when you showed me.
I mean,
that. Okay.
generally, there's problems sometimes with one or two of them, but yeah, I mean, they're under warranty, so
Right. Okay.
that's another plus.
Any more questions? I just wanted to. So in previous years, we had the opportunity to look at different scenarios based on tax rates. So 91 cents is certainly not a given. We can't go higher, but we could say the same or go lower. I'm wondering if we were to go to 89 cents where we are, or perhaps even lower, what are the items that you all would be looking at that or other sources of revenue? For example, the 1.2 from the sale of the Columbia Gas building or property.
Right,
anyone else
yeah, the
thinking
one, yeah, that one
Mhm.
coming in later. That's certainly something that isn't accounted for in all of it.
Actually more.
Yeah, we'd also talked about, I mean, West End said we don't have a particular project to go forward with at this moment. Do we pause that? Do we, if we don't move forward with the pool house right now? That's an immediate expenditure that doesn't.
So repeat, pause what now?
Well, we have dedicated a penny, the value of last year's penny to West End without a specific project on that. I would love to be able to do more on that lot as well. But right now we have 600,000 in there. It would be nice to have something specific to tie it to, like that you were saying, I thought earlier, but what are you pointing at?
Talking about Adam?
Because Leslie said we had specific we do have a project for the West End funds. that
We
we're
have the
putting
study that was
aside.
completed, but I
Do we
mean,
have
I mean,
but we don't have there's been no work to date on like a master plan.
that's
of sorts
correct.
for
There's been no work to date. And I was only talking about the remainder of the property at the courthouse that obviously nobody wants it to stay a parking lot.
Right.
And so so those funds could potentially be used to help conceptualize and
Right.
develop whatever that area is right there as an idea. I'm not saying that's been,
So what you-
decided.
so what
but-
you was talking about, the funds that's already there.
Yeah, there's funds in the budget right now for the past 2 years, plus the third
Plus
year that
year.
we're
Five-
about to,
Right. So if
$574,000.
we decide to hold
for next year.
for next year,
Mhm.
so that was something that I was getting at,
Mhm.
which maybe we didn't even understand each other, but as far as the money that's in there, I wouldn't think about using that anywhere else.
Right.
Sure,
No,
that would
no,
stay in the
absolutely
West
not.
End.
No, it
Going
stays there.
forward right now, I'm not talking about moving that money at all.
Yeah.
I'm talking
Right.
about the 1 cent that we would allocate for this budget season. Could we hold that
Hold that back.
for this budget season?
You can do anything you want for next year.
Rather than.
What I'm saying, you could rededicate that money if you
Yes.
wanted to.
I get what you're saying.
You could reallocate it to a different purpose.
Right,
Sure.
so yeah, because right now we don't have a specific project going forward
Mhm.
that we could use another 1 cent going into that fund. So if we want to hold either the
It would be,
West End or the library, but not Uniontown, because we going to need that with the proposed grant that's coming.
we have separate, yes, but we do have separate line items for water and sewer, exclusive of the 1 cent.
I would personally like to try to find a way because we've seen significant increases in real estate values.
Right.
Previous, 2 years ago was on average about 29%. This year, on average, about 14%. So we're seeing your average property has gone up 43%. That has given us increased revenues on that, but it's also certainly put a lot of people in a crunch. You would be, I don't, we obviously are all thinking very carefully about what our needs, what our wants on this, and I would like to, think
Yeah.
carefully about, what, if we're just going to store money with a theoretical
Right,
idea, I
right.
don't want to raise anything.
Right. And which is why when you were mentioning the 1.2 from the sale of the property, and then looking at the 2% increase earmarked to infrastructure, I would rather not raise taxes and use money that was coming in.
Could that
from
be like
sale.
a one-time seed money for infrastructure reserve?
And there's also the
certainly not.
sale of the property, the animal shelter.
Well,
If
we
and when
share
it's
that.
sold.
Yeah, we share
That's not
that.
gonna
Oh,
be-
but that's a
that's not gonna be
portion.
big
But that
Yeah.
money is probably gonna stay we need to have that money stay in the animal shelter.
Okay.
Yeah, that would be my recommendation.
All right. Is there also, I know that there's an emergency reserve money that we're required to keep a certain amount in at a certain level, a certain
Mhm.
percentage.
We're at
Safety net, yes.
Yes, a safety net.
16.5.
16.5.
And that money
Yeah.
has to be there for emergencies,
Like the end of the world emergencies, yeah.
right? Kind of like what's going on in downtown Stanton.
Well,
If we could
Um,
tie it to flood
and
damage.
So
Eh.
it has to
if,
be tied specific. Yeah.
We caught
Okay.
it before it was necessary.
Not just,
That'd have to be
It-
part of a budget.
overdue
It can't
maintenance.
be for lack of maintenance.
Okay.
So if we can tie that to flood damage or some natural event that occurred, then possibly. I mean, that's probably a last resort recommendation we would make, because then you do
We-
have you have 3 years to
3 years to
to
repay it, or
repay
to
yeah,
restore
we
it.
have to, we have to have some sort of
You have to have a
plan or
plan.
an idea to
Right.
have to pay that back, but
right.
but that safety net is there if we needed it. Because it's not a known, we don't know what's under there.
I don't know.
We don't know what it is or what the cause of it.
Know how to keep rebar from rusting.
Right, so
Pour oil on the top.
1.1 plus the 2 cents from each one of those.
Seven.
To,
From West End and Library.
yes. And go towards the infrastructure that we don't know about right now.
I-
I'll just say that I was just throwing that out as
Yeah,
an option.
Right.
I certainly don't, I think the level of investment or project that we will identify in the West End, it will be of a magnitude that's gonna
Mhm.
require a lot more than
Millions.
that. So I'm not,
Certainly,
I
right.
certainly don't want to give any indication that I'm saying we shouldn't have these reserves.
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
We're not saying that we shouldn't, it's just that,
Or
We-
stop feeding
These are
them.
things we know are
well,
coming.
we don't want to stop feeding them, but as we set that goal to do that, we can also have that to just put a hold on it for a 2026 budget.
Agreed. That's an option.
We also have a
Be an
library.
option. Yeah.
I'm sorry. The library study could show the structural damage. The library study could show, it's
Don't
a
even.
moist, I'm not gonna say it, but
Well, no, I will-
we have to have a reserve fund for the library as well, because that study's gonna.
I'm
something We
hopeful
need to be ready for.
about
as
that because
well.
when they did the fix of the roof and the,
Yeah.
because it has those weird internal gutters, when they started doing that, that seemed to get the water away and Sarah's told me, Ms. Scrubbs has told me that it's no longer,
Yeah, that seemed to resolve quite a few of the issues,
Yeah,
actually,
which is
so.
gives me a lot of hope on
Especially-
there.
Yes.
But the main thing, because I think it was the 2014 library study was the last one. It was something
yeah,
like
that's
that. And it
about
came
right.
up with like, how about 9 million right now? And they went,
Right.
But this particular study is supposed to give us a phased plan so that we could do one piece at a time. So it wouldn't be a $10 million or nothing. It would be let's move forward with accessibility. Let's move forward with this. So it shouldn't be a giant, I'm talking myself, but it shouldn't be a giant one-time thing. So we should be able to move forward in pieces with that.
Thought you said moving forward with pizzas.
That's 2 years.
Comments, anyone else?
Yeah, I mean, I'd just like to echo what Councilor Arrowood said about the pressure on our residents from the real estate assessments. It's looking at the state averages for the real estate tax rate. We're still below the median average, but the problem is the rate of increase that they actually pay because of the increase in assessments. And we just want to, be mindful of the burden, and it affects lots of things. As some of our residents have pointed out in the public comments, housing, for instance, a priority for us. But if you raise the property tax rates and there's pressure on landlords to raise rents, and that's already a concern for us, affordable housing. So we may have to be creative in, for instance, what we've just talked about, reallocating the 3 cents in the big infrastructure, West End, Library, Uniontown, taking some of that possibly on a temporary basis just for this year for emergency needs, and thereby maybe averting the need to increase taxes so much. But I want to say something else about, I'm a big believer in making investments that will yield efficiencies and savings over time. And so, in that vein, things like renewable energy, what we're doing with the yard waste program, potentially reducing the amount of trash going to the landfill. And so, the $1 million that we pay every year as our share of the landfill costs, that potentially could go down. That's a great thing. So in that vein, we talked about a new position to generate more grant money for the city. And so that's something I just like to revive the discussion of that it could pay for itself. Yes, there's upfront money that we will have to pay for this position, but that I think it could yield some significant benefits in terms of helping us meet some of these infrastructure needs that we've been talking about, and supporting all of our departments that are applying for grants and generating, significantly more grant funds than we're doing now.
I agree with you, Councilor Overholzer. I think the grant proposal position is definitely an investment, not an expense. And I believe it would pay for itself. Maybe not the first year, but it definitely in 2 years would yield profits extensively. And I think it would help us in a lot of ways. And also these programs that are asking for money in light of the United Way not being around, I think could help some of these programs as well. So I think we could be supportive to our neighbors and to our citizens by creating that grant position.
It sounds like, as we kind of wrap up here, that because Leslie's going to come back next week with a honed budget that we need to give her. We've talked a lot. I see her tapping away, but she's talked a lot, and we've talked a lot, that we need to give her guidance, what our priorities really are, and then how can funding be found for me? How can funding be found with what we have without increasing taxes, and even maybe going down if we could? I mean, over 2 years, 43% increase is for families that are struggling. I mean, I think I was talking to you today about the number of Alice families, asset limited income families that are struggling, and I see real estate tax as a regressive tax.
I see houses going on the market.
Yeah, what do you mean? Like
The
more
n-
houses on the market, do you mean? Or,
I mean, we have to look at that. I didn't, I'm just seeing as I'm riding around
Hmm.
cities, I'm seeing houses going on.
certainly houses are staying on the market for longer now. We're not in the crazy position that we were here a couple years ago, something like that, when it was, houses are on average on the market for a day. And we're going for above asking price, but it's definitely still a strong real estate market, especially in Stanton. I agree, Michelle.
The number of phone calls and emails that I've received in the past, well, since the last meeting that we've had, have been people who have just begged to not increase the tax rate, because they can't afford it. And it's just that simple. There's just a lot of people that just can't, they can't with the assessments that have gone up the last 3 assessment periods, and then to have a tax increase on top of that is just too much. And with the price increases that we've seen at the grocery store, doesn't help matters much more. But to have another tax, and then when your tax assessment goes up, your insurance goes up as well. When the value of your home goes up, your insurance goes up. So everything goes up. So anything we can do, I think, to keep the tax rate down is going to be helpful to people.
So, anyone?
I mean, I certainly don't want to downplay that. I absolutely agree with you. At the same time, I think the fact that historically we've had somewhere between the 25th percentile and 50th percentile for municipality tax rates in the state is coming back to bite us now. And if we don't get ahead of these infrastructure needs, the end game is we get to a point where we might be talking about reverting from a city to a town.
I do want to ask, did you say 25th and 50th? Okay. Yeah, because I know it, when we set 0.89 2 years ago, we were in about the bottom 20th percentile on that. So I mean, 80% of the cities out there, and comparing us to counties just does not
No,
make
you can't
sense.
do it.
It's not.
How much does your well cost?
No, it's apples and oranges.
Build your, yeah.
What
So-
about incomes?
When I looked at the comparison just to other cities, we're still below the median average.
Certainly. We're also a city that we make, yeah, when you see a city that has snow plows on garbage trucks, we are making do and spending it efficiently, but we absolutely are keeping everyone in mind when trying to set these.
Yeah. And looking at all these unfunded expenses,
Yes.
the positions that are not funded in the fire department and not unfunded, and there is infrastructure that is crumbling. And yet, want Stanton to be affordable for everyone.
Mhm.
Right.
So we're saying we want to see a budget scenario with level tax rate. Is that something we want to see?
Maybe it's staying the same percentage.
89 cents. Is that what you mean?
Correct.
That's what. So remove the 2-cent additional cents, fine 600 and something $1,000. Basically, that takes away the infrastructure money we set aside. I mean, that's what that is directly tied to, the 2-cent increase.
I had suggested, and maybe I was wrong, that the 1.2 from the sale, Jesse said that could be put wherever we wanted to put that.
I would
that's-
concentrate on CIP projects and not operating expenses.
Right.
Mhm.
And so going toward infrastructure then, 1.2.
Yep.
Is about 4 cents or 5 cents, so.
But it's not because it's one
Yeah.
time.
Oh, but I'm sorry, yes.
I mean,
Right.
you were right, the
Yeah.
equivalency, but it's also one-time money, so it goes away as soon as you use it, unless you're gonna increase the tax rate again. But it's there, and that's good. We weren't counting on it, so it's good that it's there.
It would exceed our proposed allocation for it. And if I was to revisit it later, but yes, 1 year, not 2 years, obviously, but
I'm glad that Counselor Overholzer brought up the grant funding, the grant position again, because short of taxes, short of tax money, really grant funding is where we're going to be looking, state funding and others. And so I think that is an investment that could bring us the revenue. I think it could have a great return on investment. And I believe this person could work with the department heads, identifying needs, looking for those grants, and working with the CSPD.
CSPDC.
That's too hard to say. To
Fine to be when you want.
to look for and write grants. I think that position that was identified, the 91,000, would come back to us in multiples easily.
Have you all had any discussions with our neighboring localities about that idea, grant writer? I just see that as, I don't know, what if the CSPDC, what if all the localities agreed to pitch in so there would be another shared position there to spread the wealth of grant
Sound
writing
bad.
instead of a locality specific position?
I mean, we can reach out. The only one I've talked to is Andy Bakes in Harrisonburg. It was a while ago, though. He has, I believe, he has a staff member kind of dedicated to that. It's not their only job, though. So that's mostly where you'll see that, is it'll be a staff member like a deputy or assistant city manager, or another department staffer, and that's part of their role. I know that the PDC was crucial in us helping us apply for that build grant. I
Yeah.
mean, so I don't know what other capacity they have. So maybe, and it's not a bad idea, is kind of thinking about how we may share a position, but I haven't really pursued that, but I can certainly reach out to Ann Cundy in the meantime and kind of see what that might look like.
And another thing to keep in mind is even if we had the specific grant writer position, certain grants like the build grant would require additional outside resources from a technical standpoint. So it's just not one and done. It would be.
Sure, it's,
Yeah.
I think also with the Planning District Commission, it would be shared with a big number of localities, but I think it's 15 or 16. So it's spread out, but certainly an improvement. And especially if you're sharing the cost.
I will say, if we want to add it to our budget, at the end of the day, our revenues must equal our expenditures. So if we add 91,000 or to our expenditures, we have to find additional revenue to support it, or we will have to take it away from another expenditure line.
And that's ongoing revenue, not one time.
Right.
But we don't have to make the decision right now.
No,
about the
you're giving
tax
us
rate.
input.
Okay.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yes.
so what
Yeah.
I've been taking notes, and what we're hearing is there is some interest in finding a way to keep the rate steady at 89 and what that might look like. There's also, I hear, interest in a grant funded position. I think that's the big things I've heard. I mean, I've written down some other questions that we'll address next week too. I know, like Mr. Campbell was talking about all the reserves and going back and kind of looking at those reserves. But again, those are one-time monies, unless you're going to decide to permanently rededicate those
Right.
funds to something, just shifting them to another project, you know, unless you're actually going to do that forever and ever, doesn't really make a dent. And it's the
Right.
same thing if you're going to say, we want to shift the Weston, Uniontown, and Library reserves away from those projects to infrastructure, unless you're going to do that forever and ever and ever, you know, at some point you would have to make a decision again to then revert those back if projects do come up, because you haven't increased your revenue sources. All you're doing is moving the money around. You're not increasing anything, which is fine. You can, of course, that's an option. And we would recommend that stay in the CIP if you're going to do that. But the money is there, and that certainly could be an alternative to the additional 2 pennies. But again, that revenue is not going to grow. It's just going to be there like it is. And it's just you're just moving it around. So did I capture it?
I'm not sure.
Yeah,
What
yeah,
you just
yeah.
said, the
Yeah.
men- that-
So
would you
I heard
say
the
that last
89
sentence?
cents, I heard the grant position. I've written down some other questions that kind of might help drive that conversation next week in terms of looking at the reserves. And looking at some alternatives to not increasing the rate by 2 cents. I mean, do I hear 4 of you that want to look at that? And
I
scenarios?
personally, I would have huge reservations going below 89.
Oh, yeah.
I think 91 is the smart move for the long run, but I certainly understand it's a huge burden we're asking for our citizens for the past 2 assessments.
I agree, like with the absolutely not below 89. Pragmatically, I think 91 would be the smart move. I understand completely and the impact it has on citizens. But I also, right now, I mean, I worry about the impact on our fire department, and then they can't even operate, and it's just that, like, to me, getting the police department, the fire department, boosts the morale. I really worry about them, and would like to see at least those 3 positions become available. And just, I don't know, just going down. And I've also, just for the record, to put it on the record, is I've gotten emails also saying that people agree with the 91 cent, and like they want to let me know, like, the 91 cent, they understand, and they want to see it, like, the city do right by, our programs and our citizens and the police and everything like that. So there is support for that in the whole, like, get what you pay for, take care of things as well. So- But yeah, it is heartbreaking, just the impact. But I did appreciate the chart. I don't know if you can show it, with the impact, like, by month. I mean, it's like a $25 to $29 a
think we have
month
that.
when you really think about the median household. That's the increase, and everything's going up. Citizens know that everything's going up, period. That includes our costs as a city.
Right. The cost to run the city goes up too, yeah.
For us.
One increase that we didn't discuss at all was an increase in the hotel tax revenue.
That's not going up.
That was never discussed, or
Well, it's not going up. That's not been performing. We've pretty much at this point feel like we don't need to push that any more than it's already been pushed.
The rate or the?
No, the
Total
revenue. Isn't that right?
Yeah, the revenue is
Not the rate.
holding steady, if we're lucky, or a little bit below
Are-
last year.
Are you talking about the rate though?
You're talking
Do
about the
you mean the
occupancy
rate
tax.
or?
rate, the revenue.
Yeah, the revenue is not increasing. I mean, it's never come up to actually adjust the rate necessarily. And I'm not even sure what a penny on that would be, actually. We could calculate that though. But
So you're saying the revenues aren't going up, and so that increasing the tax would have an adverse effect on?
I didn't say that.
Maybe-
I'm just
Oh,
saying
okay.
what we projected for 26 is the
Level.
rate's the same.
Right.
And basically, we're not seeing big growth in that revenue right now. So in looking at kind of how the data is trending, we're not willing to kind of push the revenue projections any higher than they are in the current year. The rate's a totally different story though. So we hadn't even really thought about proposing any changes to the rate. So. And I'm not sure how we compare to other localities, if that's something you all are interested in pursuing, but I think it was increased. Well, it was increased for the tourism a while ago. Yeah.
Believe that was 2016.
Yeah, 2016. So it's been about 8 years since it was last increased
find
for
out.
tourism.
Sure, I'd love to know.
Love to
How
know,
how
okay.
we compare to other localities on that. That would be
We're
interesting.
considerably lower.
Are we? Okay. It would be
We're lower.
good to see that.
Charlottesville's about 14%.
What
Like us
impact
to
it
do
would
the same
be.
with meals or just hotel?
Yeah, just so we know. I feel like our meals is on the upper end. That's what I'm told, but but
Char-
not
I know
necessarily
Charlottesville
meals,
went up.
primarily
Expensive to
hotels,
go
because
out.
I want to know how we compare, because that's also a fee that does not hit
Maggie is here.
residents.
I mean,
Yeah.
Charlottesville on the
Um,
Airbnb
Miss-
tax.
Ms.
Right,
Reagan,
well,
would-
we do
Reagan
get
is
that.
here.
yeah, Ms. Reagan, did you want Ms. Reagan to address your question? Or are you just
Well, I don't know if Ms. Reagan is
prepared to answer your
for other
question?
localities. Do you want me to leave you alone or?
I mean,
We will get that information.
Yeah,
to you all,
okay,
We'll
yeah.
just-
we-
Rather than putting Ms. Reagan on the
Right,
spot,
right.
We'll get that
That's fine.
information. for
You
you.
may
Thank you.
sit
I had
down.
no
Ms.
idea.
Reagan.
I didn't know she was here. I
Yeah,
didn't
I-
want to
to come up
bother
with
her.
That's
It's
fine.
just
Red,
not how we
she's-
compare, but how the trend is moving here, period. You said it's staying steady. The meals tax and the sales tax and all that is staying because we know.
Last time I looked.
Meals tax, there is an increase in the budget for meals tax because it is still performing
Oh,
well.
here
It's
she-
90,000, so it's not a large increase, but lodging is one that is going to be hard to make budget this year.
I think Jesse has given you the correct
Yeah.
information. I just want to be clear, based on the questions that you've asked, we are pretty middle of the road as far as occupancy tax is concerned. That's combined with sales tax. So we're at a total of, we have 6.7% on the occupancy with 5.3. So the total on a sale is 12%. So when you're looking at Charlottesville, it's not 14%. That's the total.
Right.
Okay, and the budget projection for this year for transient occupancy tax was very aggressive last year. And I don't think we're gonna make that budget this year. Meals are strong right now, sales tax is strong, but occupancy is not as strong. So I don't think there's any room to increase those numbers in the budget for next year as far as occupancy, but I think there is a slight increase as far as the meals and sales.
Thank you, Ms. Reagan.
Yeah, I mean, it is a balanced approach because I mean, it isn't just real estate tax. It isn't just that. I mean, I had asked Jesse to put together again this year the direct comparison, because 2 years ago, right, when we were agonizing over the rate and we picked 89, suddenly Waynesboro says 0.77. We thought, what on earth? But we asked Jesse to put together a comparison with a medium priced house in Stanton with the same value house in Waynesboro and only unavoidable expenses, water, you use an average amount. You have 2 used cars, total value about
It's an
$30,000.
estimation of real estate, personal property,
Yeah.
water, sewer, and refuse
If you live,
together.
if you live in
Yeah.
each city, unavoidable expenses, you paid on average 8% more to live in Waynesboro, even at 0.77.
Correct.
And this year at 0.91, it was about 7%, holding steady on that. We don't know they're projected yet, too. So everything else there costs more. And so, it would be interesting to know if we are in line with other localities for other fees and all of that. I mean, like the landfill, we found that we were getting unintended trash just because we were so low and it was worth driving here.
And I do believe our personal property rate is pretty low compared to other
Yeah,
cities.
it's very low.
It's, yes.
So, yeah, I mean. Things to compare, but I don't know. Do you,
We can pull those comparisons.
thank you.
Yeah, I guess it would be helpful for me to see comparisons at different tax rates to see what we could do at different tax
And we can
rates.
show like what a percentage more would be,
Mhm, yeah.
never, yeah. Yep. Okay.
Thank you.
I think we have our marching orders, so
Alrighty.
information
Be
together.
An easy week for you ladies.
For next week's work session. And if you have any other questions in the meantime, please don't hesitate to reach out. It's easier if we do get the questions in advance, so we could kind of look into those questions for. But
And
yeah,
there will be a public hearing next week for citizen input on the budget.
and we also we'll start off the meeting with a joint school board work session as well. And then that'll be followed by our own work session. So that'll be the only items on the work session agenda other than a closed session at the very end of the work session. So, but we'll have quite a bit of time for our work session. So we'll be good.
All righty. Well, I will call the Stanton City Council work session for April 3rd. to be adjourned.